Not all languages use words. In some parts of the world, people communicate by putting whistling. Silbo Gomero is an example of a whistling language. It is an ancient form of communication used in La Gomera, one of Spain's Canary Islands. Long ago, when dwellings were spread far apart in these valleys, whistling was developed as a form of communication. Relaying a message through whistling was easier than walking to a friend or relative's home. Neighbors often whistled to warn each other of dangers. While the language seemed to be dying out in the 1950s and 60s, Silbo Gomero experienced a revival in the 90s when it became a compulsory subject at schools in La Gomera. The simple language, which is based on Spanish, has 2 whistles for vowels and 4 whistles for consonants. The length and tone of the whistles help convey the meaning. In 2009, UNESCO declared this unique language as a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. Do you swim in the ocean, or are you afraid of sharks? Many humans have a strong fear of sharks. This is an irrational fear, since the chance of being attacked by a shark is extremely low. In a typical year, fewer than 20 people worldwide die from a shark attack. There are hundreds of shark species, but only 3 are typically to blame for attacks involving humans. The tiger shark, the bull shark, and the great white have all attacked and killed humans over the years. Shark attacks are classified as either provoked or unprovoked. A provoked attack is when a human initiates the attack. An unprovoked attack is when a shark initiates an attack. While shark attacks are extremely rare, humans kill an estimated 100 million sharks a year. Many sharks are fished for their fins and thrown back in the ocean to die. The fins are mainly used for a delicacy known as shark fin soup, which can cost up to $0 a bowl. Some fins are considered trophies and can be worth thousands of dollars.
What if you could make your sleep more efficient? As a sleep scientist, this is the question that has captivated me for the past 10 years. Because while the light bulb and technology have brought about a world of 24-hour work and productivity, it has come at the cost of our naturally occurring circadian rhythm and our body's need for sleep. The circadian rhythm dictates our energy level throughout the day. And only recently, we've been conducting a global experiment on this rhythm, which is putting our sleep health and ultimately our life quality in jeopardy. Because of this, we aren't getting the sleep we need, with the average American sleeping a whole hour less than they did in the 1940s. For some reason, we decided to wear it as a badge of honor that we can get by on not enough sleep. This all adds up to a real health crisis. Most of us know that poor sleep is linked to diseases like Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, stroke, and diabetes. And if you go untreated with a sleep disorder like sleep apnea, you're more likely to get many of these illnesses. But did you know about sleep's impact on your mental states? Poor sleep makes us make risky, rash decisions and is a drain on our capacity for empathy. When sleep deprivation literally makes us more sensitive to our own pain, it's not so surprising that we have a hard time relating to others and just generally being a good and healthy person when we're sleep deprived.
The second big driver that will transform our future is, of course, demographics. 1 billion children are alive today, all of whom will be adults within the next 18 years. All of them will see your lifestyle on CNN or NBC, even if they don't own a TV. They will see it through the door of the bar. They will see it through the posters on the side of the highway, even if they don't own a car. 1 billion children, all of whom will consume resources. Linked to that, an urbanization trend at a pace of which we have never seen before. 300 million people in China alone will move from rural areas into cities in the next 8 or 9 years. Another 450 million people will move in Africa off the land and into cities. Most of them, most city dwellers, already live in slums. They have no running water, or maybe the very first service they have is access to a tap 100 meters away. They have, at the moment, very little access to electricity, but they're there, and they're demanding infrastructure, and their homes will grow from the one-story shack to 2 stories to 3 stories. And then once the mains water supply arrives, another crisis comes. As of course, as you've seen it, which is the puddles of water everywhere, the drains that are full of soap and human waste, the earth that used to be dry, because people only carried 10 litres, 100 metres every 10 hours. Now we have leaking taps, we have sewage problems, and we have a whole host of other issues requiring more infrastructure.
You might picture Neanderthals as cavemen gnawing on bones around a campfire. Which wouldn't be inaccurate, but Neanderthals may have also dined on roasted vegetables and known a bit about medicinal plants too. So says a study in the journal Naturwissenschaften, The Science of Nature. Researchers analyzed hardened dental plaque from 5 Neanderthals found in El Sidrón Cave, in northern Spain. Yes, 50,000-year-old dental plaque. And they found a lot lurking between the teeth. Like evidence of nuts, grasses and green veggies, chemical traces of wood smoke, and tiny, intact starch granules, proof Neanderthals ate their carbs. And in one individual, they detected compounds found in the medicinal herbs chamomile and yarrow. The herbs have no nutritional value, and since Neanderthals did have the gene to detect the herb's bitter taste, The researchers speculate that the cave dwellers were munching on them not as food, but to self-medicate. Not too far-fetched, they say, because primates like chimps also use medicinal plants. Luckily for the scientists doing this detective work, Neanderthals may have known a thing or two about medicine, but they didn't get regular checkups at the dentist.
Dogs aren't just man's best friend. Previous studies have shown that kids with dogs are less likely to develop asthma. Now a new study may show how, if results from mice apply to us. The work was presented at a meeting of the American Society for Microbiology. The study tests what's called the hygiene hypothesis. The idea is that extreme cleanliness may actually promote disease later on. Researchers collected dust from homes that had a dog. They fed that house dust to mice. They then infected the mice with a common childhood infection called respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV.
To reach some kind of understanding of a period in the past, the Middle Ages, say, requires a creative act of the imagination, not unlike that of a novelist getting inside the skins of their characters or establishing the environment they live in. What must it have been like to be a peasant under a feudal baron? What might his beliefs and politics have been? Did he, for example, think his situation was simply part of the natural order of things, or that it was grossly unfair and needed to be overthrown? So you have to imagine the terms under which life was lived in those days, and learn to feel in a different way about things by putting yourself into a world very different from your own. Now, of course, every age views the past from its own present, and an 18th century historian's concept of the Middle Ages will be very different from that of one from the 21st century, which is why each age has to write its history over again. It's not so much that more facts or evidence come to light, if they do, but that sensibilities change too.
It seems to me that architecture is very much something that causes us both pleasure and trouble. I live in the part of Western London where I think many of the streets where I live, are really, really ugly. And this distresses me every time I walk to a supermarket or walk to a tube. I think, why did they build that? And terribly without architecture. It lasts so long, and if you write a bad book or do a bad play, I will be shocked when it is showed and no one would suffer. A bad building has a serious impact could be hundreds of years on the people around it. And suppose the book arose a little bit from frustration, almost anger, and there is so much bad architecture around. And then I realized if you talk about architecture, you will say why buildings are not more beautiful. And you will say I can use such a word as beauty. That's a really arrogant word. And no one knows what beautiful is. It's all in the eye of the beholder. I couldn't help but think that, actually. Well, that we all attempt to agree that Rome is nicer than Milky King's, and San Francisco has the edge of Frankfurt, so we can make that sort of generalization. Surely there are some things we can say about why a building works or why it doesn't. So the books really attempt to suggest why architecture works when it does, and what might be going to be wrong when it doesn't work.
The professor is talking about economics in colonial New England.
We know that in colonial New England, the Native Americans, compared to the European colonists, had a far greater knowledge of what resources in the environment could be eaten or made useful. Native Americans used a wide range of resources for economic subsistence, and these resources were simply used by the family that acquired them. Only a few resources were accumulated for the purpose of showing a person's social status. For example, shells, furs, and ornaments of the hunt.
Excuse me, Dr. Singer, but did the Native Americans have a concept of wealth?
The Native Americans believed a person's status came more from kinship and personal alliances than from stores of wealth. Their definition of need was what they needed to survive. So if they had food, clothing, and shelter, they considered themselves wealthy. For the European colonists, on the other hand, resources in the environment were seen more as commodities, as goods that could be exchanged in markets. European economies measured commodities in terms of money values, abstract equivalencies that could be accumulated and could function as indicators of wealth and social status. So for the colonists, need was defined by the markets that bought New England goods. So the Europeans perceived few resources in New England ecosystems, but they saw many commodities, fur, fish, timber, which could be sold in the marketplace for profit.
Listen to a discussion in a business class.
The computerized workplace can be hazardous to your health if you don't take preventative measures. Today, we'll go over what some of these hazards are, and more importantly, what can be done about them. One major complaint, maybe the biggest complaint, of people who spend time at the computer is eye strain. To help ease the strain on the eyes, the computer screen should be about 2 feet from your eyes. The entire screen should be in focus. The brightness and contrast should be adjusted for best readability. A good way to relieve eye strain is to look away from the screen frequently. Focus your eyes on objects that are far away, like something outside, the building across the street or the tree in the parking lot.
But what if your office doesn't have a window? I mean, I've worked in lots of places where there's no window.
Then in that case, you need to get up and walk around. You should never sit for more than 30 minutes at a time anyway. This is important for the rest of your body as well, namely your back. Neck and back pain are a big problem for computer people. Always make sure your screen, keyboard, and chair are at the right height for you.
China, which has both enjoyed sustained economic growth, face worrying challenges. There are worrying indications that social progress is starting to lag behind economic performance, with the slowdown in the rate of reduction in child deaths a special concern. The UN notes that China spends 5% of its GDP on health, but public spending now amounts to less than 2% of GDP. The erosion of public funding, it says, has resulted in a mismatch between need and provision, with per capita spending in urban areas 3.5 times that in rural areas. Between 70 and 80% of the rural population have no health insurance. Children living in the poorest parts of rural China face far greater health risks, and the gap is
The body of the worker bee is divided into three segments: head, thorax, and abdomen. On the head are the mandibles, the jaw-like organs which enable the bees to perform the necessary hive duties and to mold the wax and build their combs. The honeybee's 4 wings and 6 legs are fastened to the thorax. Located in the abdomen are the honey sac and the sting, with its highly developed poison sac. The sting is used by the workers for self-defense and for the protection of their colony. The worker uses her sting only once, for in doing so, she
You might blame your pets for shedding all over the house, but we humans do it too, and our stuff is alive.
We're constantly emitting microbes around us, and this is coming from shedding of our skin, from exhaling, our hair, and we're just full of these guys.
Adam Altrichter, a microbial ecologist at the University of Oregon.
We've never been sterile organisms. We are definitely masses of microbes, both in and on us.
If you're picturing the Peanuts character Pigpen, you may not be far off, because biologists estimate we shed 1 million particles an hour, including, of course, a lot of bacteria. Altrichter and his colleagues wanted to measure that cloud of particles, the Pigpen effect, if you will. So they asked 11 volunteers not to shower, dressed them in shorts and tank tops, and put them in a sterile chamber for hours at a time, while collecting microbial samples on surfaces and in the air. What they found in those samples was a menagerie of bacteria, from the volunteers' skin, guts, genital tracts, lungs, noses, and mouths. And for 8 of the 11 study subjects, the microbial cloud was unique enough to identify the individual who'd left it, suggesting that this bacterial fingerprint could someday be used in forensics. The study is in the journal Peer J. Given that we spend 90% of our lives indoors, our microbial clouds also colonize the places we live and work, and yes, the people around us.
It's just kind of interesting to think about how the people that we interact with at work or in classrooms or other environments, how we could be sharing some of these microbial passengers between us, not even knowing anything about it.
And now that you do know about it, hopefully your view of your coworkers won't become clouded.
Jet lag. Jumping a few time zones causes problems with sleep and even digestion, but new research means we could be a step closer to preventing this voyager's vexation. The study centers on the hormone vasopressin, thought to have a role in maintaining our internal clock. Researchers genetically engineered mice that do not respond to vasopressin. Both engineered and normal rodents lived in a set cycle of light and dark for 2 weeks. Then the researchers changed the light cycle by 8 hours. And the vasopressin-insensitive mice recovered from their induced jet lag much more quickly than did their hormone-sensitive peers. The work is in the journal Science. Jet lag may seem like a minor annoyance, but for those who travel frequently or work unusual hours, it's a chronic problem that can increase the risk of hypertension and obesity. You cannot simply knock out vasopressin signaling permanently. That would have negative effects on behavior and brain activity. But a drug that temporarily suppresses vasopressin to reduce jet lag may be a frequent flyer's dream.
Our facility includes 5 libraries across the university. This is the first example of a modern and professional army.